I probably one reason why they got it set up this way. They have a meeting in here Monday morning to keep the set of it in unset. You know, they got a city coming in. No, that's not every. Not every. That's probably, yeah, right. More like.
Just kidding. Money on this thing. Right.
Fred, there's coffee over there.
Coffee.
Coffee.
You have to be careful.
This being real
So if you head to the bathroom, you take over.
Wow. Do you have any idea? It's in that box. You've heard of wine in a box, now it's coffee in a box. I'm distracted by all the freaking neighbors. Can't relate to water issues. I told one of them, next thing I know, they think they show us support.
Well, it's at 8:30. We got a busy schedule this morning. 8:31.
He's the one with
I'm sure.
the pipe totally within his property line.
We're going to call our meeting to order this morning. This is our work session this morning, and I welcome you, and I would ask if you have cell phones to please turn them off at this time. We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Joyce, followed with prayer by Councilmember Reed.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to pray with us this morning, would you please remain standing? Dear God of us all, we thank you for this day. We thank you for new grace. We thank you for new mercy, God, and we thank you for favor. We thank you that you have allowed us together once and again, God. We ask you to bless the agenda that has been set before us. Allow us to make decisions based on the city of Madison. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. This is our work session this morning. Topics for discussion is Candle Lane, committee appointments, planning department acquisition, Main Street director report, and city manager's report. And we'll start with Candle Lane. I had an opportunity to visit Candle Lane and a resident on Candle Lane maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago, and she was sharing with me the problem that they're having on Candle Lane and the problem they've had for years. And we know it's been an ongoing problem for a long time. The city manager and I did talk, and I think you also talked with our city manager as well. And he was going to have the engineer to come and talk with us this morning because we all see it as a problem. And I hope that we can get this problem resolved, not today, not tomorrow, but hopefully in the future we can get this problem resolved for the residents in that particular area. So you all will be happy to live where you are. And at this time, Mr. Nunn, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my greatest and one of my, well, many frustrations, but a lot of frustrations and a lot of problems are done by just not enough money to do things with. In this case on Candler Lane, and I don't know how often it happens, the street flooding, the intermittent street flooding down there happens maybe as many times, 4 times a year, maybe once a year, I'm not sure. But it's certain rains where it is not prolonged and not steady, but a real downpour of a lot of rain in a hurry. My opinion, and I don't know what the engineer's going to say, I didn't write up his script, but our thinking is that the pipe that is installed through that neighborhood gets overcharged with lots of water. And Jason Brown with Georgia Civil is here to talk about just how much water is centered on that creek from lots of different areas of town, and a lot of it shows up there and expects to get through that creek and through that pipe, and it just does not do it. You could go back to pipe sizing 20 years ago or 25 years ago when it was put in, so the city bears some responsibility for maybe not having the engineer or the contractor put in a big enough pipe, but that's just me thinking, how could we have done a better job? But we are where we are. We know what happens. Thank you to several of the Candler Lane residents for being here. I've been down several times. We're looking for solutions, and to get at that, I've asked Georgia Civil to calculate and to study the basin, find out what the pipe size should be, and then possible solutions from the easiest and the most doable initially to probably the most expensive, which would be a huge disruption, but certainly can be done to replace or add pipe to that stream. So Jason, if you would come up and come to the podium so everybody can hear you, and I apologize that Jason will be his back facing the crowd, but he can address the council and the mayor and offer comments, and then we can take some questions, I guess. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, and like David said, I mean, I've been out there 3 or 4 times over the last couple of years. The first couple of times were actually probably a few residents had asked me to come take a look. And then the last time we were out there was maybe November of last year, kind of looking at it on a more global scale as far as the total drainage basin. And I kind of have a map, which I'm not sure if there's any way to present it where everybody can see it, but basically that's the very end of Candler Lane, which is the lowest point down there. There's about 108 acres or so, plus or minus, of drainage. It basically goes all the way through town, all the way back to the railroad track behind our office, and then all the way up to the crest of the hill, down where Harris Street, Belmont, all those streets drain, which is a tremendous basin to be captured by that storm pipe system in Candler Lane. Just to put that in perspective, the drainage calculations that I've done for that, for 108 acres, and I have to kind of apply a certain usage, which CN value, which is a land use, that's an engineering term, but that's a land use application value we apply to it for the amount of impervious coverage, is about an 85, which is pretty average for our urban area. But that flow, the 25-year storm, when we study these in different storm events, 1 year all the way through 100-year, most pipe systems now, particularly if they cross under roadways, are at least designed for the 50, if not the 100-year storm event. With the 100-year maybe not staying within the pipe, but not backing out of the structures into the road, which could obviously be a safety concern for vehicles. But what's coming through there now, I mean, just based on my estimation, the 25-year storm is about 520 CFS, which is much more. I think the pipes out there, I think it starts up there maybe a 36 or so at the start. If you enter Candler Lane on the right, it appears that there was probably a stream that was possibly piped as part of that, because I've never been through that. There was not a base flow right there, and that's picked up by that storm pipe system. And then I think by the time you get to the end down there where you and I walked last time, there's maybe 2 double pipes, and there may be 36, 42 inch. And it appears that they get, like you said, they overflow quite often in storm events. But basically, those double 42 inch pipes could handle a total of about 110 cubic feet per second. You know, that's if they're in great shape, laid at 1%. And I'm saying the 25-year flow right now would average at the start of Cantor Lane about 520 CFS, and by the time you get to the end, the basins increase, you'd be looking at more like 630 CFS. So you're not, I guess, in perspective, you're not talking about, you know, bumping up a pipe size or so. It would be, if you were really trying to, by today's standards, take into account the storm drainage through there, you would be replacing the pipe system from the start of Cantor Lane all the way through. And it would probably, it could be, you know, even double 60-inch pipes can handle about 300 CFS. So you still would not even be, you'd be, you know, just over half the flow capacity that you would need for the 25-year storm. But it's a tremendous, it's not only a large basin, but there's a lot of impervious in it because it's in such a, you know, high impervious area, if that makes sense. So, like I said, I'm not really proposing a solution right now. I'm just really identifying what the magnitude of the flow that we're talking about that comes through there. Because I know we looked at the two pipes at the end. If you just replace a few downstream, that's really doing nothing upstream, right? You got to go to the start of the constriction point, which would be the pipes that start on Cantor Lane when you first enter the neighborhood. And like I said, even at that point, there's over 90 acres that drain to the start of that neighborhood. So, like I said, I don't know if, I'm sure most of you have been down there. I mean, I've got pictures, I've got the overall drainage map, which is pretty detailed because we have the Morgan County GIS data, we also have the NOAA data, which overlaps. So the basin itself, I'm pretty comfortable with that. Now, if we really want to do a detailed assessment of the existing pipe system and all the other pipes that tie into those, we would actually need to do more of an actual survey of those, which we could do also. But I'm just saying, from looking at it from a high level, there's no doubt it's tremendously undersized by today's standards. Now, it doesn't mean you would have to bring it up completely to today's standards. I mean, it's up to, on a local street, it's up to the local jurisdiction as to how much, you know, drainage you account for. If it was GDOT, then it would be to the 100-year period. So it's really not, it's like David, we already knew, it's not a simple fix, and it wouldn't be a cheap fix if you're really trying to handle all the drainage and have no water backing out of any structures anywhere down the system. But it also, I mean, it appears the very lowest level down there, I know it backs out. I've seen it back out there into the road a couple feet deep. And then it's not just the capacity of the pipes and backing out into the road. I know the stream channel itself is pretty eroded at the end of that pipe system. And there again, you've got pipes that are under pressure. It's pretty high velocity of water, you know, that is coming through that channel. So that's another thing too. You know, there's the things that are under the city's, I guess, purview as far as permitting, and then you would be getting into EPD if we're talking about going in there and trying to either stabilize or modify some of that stream channel below. But there again, if the pipe system were larger, you know, you wouldn't have such velocities at the end of that system also. So that, you know, a larger pipe system would help downstream also. So that was kind of throwing a lot of it at you, but basically, you know, the pipes are, you know, less than a quarter of the size really that they would need to be if we were designing that subdivision to date to carry that water. And there'd probably even be a stormwater retention as part of the subdivision if it was built by today's standards also.
So I guess now, so you're telling us now that right now there's no solution?
Well, no, I'm not saying there's no solution. I mean, if you were to replace all the pipe system, I just think that pipe system runs just to the right side of the road. It would be, you'd have to take it out through, what was that, 3 or 4 driveways. It wouldn't just.
You take it through 8 or 10 driveways.
Yeah, it's not, well.
Because the Cantor Lane is a traditional neighborhood development street. The houses are very close to the street. There's not a sidewalk on that side, but there may be utilities on that side.
Yeah.
So everything is very compacted. Everything is very, very much, you're on top of everything. So I don't know if more than one pipe or one pipe, it's a major job to do. I think sewer may be in the middle of the street. I'm not certain about that, but you got water services, sewer services, natural gas services. which all that can be done. But my frustration is that there's not been a simple fix. I know there have been fixes suggested, clearing out the stream, straightening out the stream, pulling the debris out of the stream down the hill. And those may have marginal improvement, but we've done some of that. We've not straightened the stream because that's illegal. We can't do that. But we did back our ears and clear some of the debris out downstream, and I'm not sure how much good it did, but we did it. And it's just frustrating because there's not a clogged manhole. There's not neglect. The things that concern me are in Mr. Smith's yard. We see water boiling up next to his foundation of his house. That's a bad joint in a pipe where the pressure is pushing water out and then it takes water back down. That's not a nuisance. That's not an inconvenience. That's a problem because there's soil that leaves every time that happens, and I know that. So I do want Georgia Civil to do a detailed survey. I'm asking you to do that today publicly. To do a job proposal for us, and we need to get our arms around what's going on everywhere, and then every possible solution that we can do. We talked about the detention that comes from the Carriage Lane neighborhood. I don't have we don't know what all of that is. There's an old structure there that's not in place anymore. That water's just free flowing right into Candler Lane. Maybe that's a little something to do. I don't know.
Well, and that's part of it too. You've got developments that, there's really no record anymore of the design that was in place then. And of course, the stormwater standards would have been much different at that time also.
Right.
And, it's like, as far as replacing, and I guess I'm not implying that the entire pipe system be replaced. I think we try to go, particularly at the low areas, is try to get it where it's not ponding either in the road or under a house. But I don't think, I don't think that the issue is that the stream channel is not straight and there's any kind of backup from that. I think it's mostly that it's just an undersized pipe system. And you've got at least one pipe, I think, that had separated. And like you said, as soon as pipes separate, then when the water goes down, they pull dirt, debris back through, then you end up sinkholes, things like that. And I've seen it in several jurisdictions over the years. So it's not something, that's just happening here. It's just, that's the way it is. I mean, the pipes fail over time. They only last so long anyway. But like David mentioned, when they're under pressure, it definitely takes its toll on much sooner than it would if they were sized properly. But we can definitely give the proposal to survey the whole system, but I think it's going to be probably not something that's a wholesale change, probably 3/4 of the way, if not the bottom of the hill. Something that can be done there and it may be adding some smaller parallel pipe systems to pick up some of the street drainage and take them directly to the stream instead of trying to keep it all in one system. Maybe something like that.
That's one idea that I had, and I think we may have talked about, to pick up and to add some. We have an opportunity from a street catch basin to pick up as large a pipe and to put it in that stream next to the existing pipe. The problem with that is I have a resident here that has pipe downstream, and it was installed after the development was done. So we need to give him guidance on the pipe he needs to install, because we can't dump all that extra water if we do that. And we could have a 36-inch pipe tied into that, and I'd like to do that. I'd like to look at that very quickly, because that is something, if a parallel pipe from the bottom of the hill into the stream would help. If it would even marginally 10% help, it'd be better than nothing. But downstream, it would inundate that person in his property. So we need to give some guidance on that, or at least fair warning, because he has pipes to replace.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question if I could.
Sure.
I've lived on Candler Lane for 16 years, and a lot of my neighbors are here today too. And it seems like the different symptoms of the water problems there are myriad. I mean, the main thing is that the big pipe we're talking about. But there's a lot of other little smaller ancillary problems with water down there. I must admit, for many years, I assumed that big pipe that carries the creek down Canada Lane was underneath the road in the public right-of-way. I was very surprised just a few years ago to find out it really goes through the front yards of my neighbors across the street, and kind of perplexing to me why it wouldn't have been done more in the right-of-way. Is it possible to add another pipe? If you say we're now at 1/4 of the carrying capacity that it should be, could another pipe be added in the street to augment what's there and not disturb those yards across the way?
Possibly, and that comes down to not just whether there's utilities, things like that, but we have to make sure there's enough cover, to even add the pipe, have enough cover and not really affect the grades around there too. And there probably would be, because there's a lot of fall till you get to the bottom. I'm more concerned when you get to the lower flat area, because the finished floors are what they are. The road, is set. So we're pretty much bound by whatever cover we have from there over to the stream, because we don't, like David said, we really can't, try not to touch the stream if possible. But if we have to, there are means in place to do that with EPD. It's a much longer permitting process if we have to go on and actually touch the stream. Now, where there's pipes crossing, some of that you can do locally without much permitting. But if we were actually going to try to physically change the channel of the stream. But yes, back to what you're saying, most likely, I think it would be adding what I was calling some of these parallel pipes. Maybe not touching much of that existing system until you get down to where it's really creating a problem. It doesn't mean in the long run that, that pipe may not separate, or there may be issues just because I know it's under pressure. And that could even be possibly having it cameraed, because surveying, all we can really see are the inverts and the boxes at each end. It doesn't tell us much about the condition of the pipe between, but you can have some of those cameras just to see how they're holding up as well.
The other issue that concerns me is that it's metal pipe, and metal pipe has a finite lifetime. And if I could go back, and the developer wouldn't like it, but it should have been concrete pipe. It should have, where our standards should have been that it was a 50 or 80-year pipe instead of a 30.
Well, particularly carrying a live stream, you're right.
Right,
When it's
right.
carrying a live stream, it's almost always RCP or HDP or something like that.
Right.
That would have a
We
longer,
have better pipe now. And
that's right.
Perhaps it could be inserted, easier than replacement. We looked at doing some of that if you add pipes.
Well, that's done sometimes too, it's basically sleeve it,
Right.
with some type
HDP.
of, I think that was done. I think GDOT actually did that, and then we're on 83, where it crosses down there.
Okay.
But yeah, you can have problems, doesn't mean you necessarily have to replace it. You could possibly sleeve it with some plastic pipe. But that might not
It's
be a bad
expensive,
idea.
but it definitely would be, better than tearing up
Yeah.
all of that and going through all the.
But that might be something to look at too, is to get and we know firms that do that too. We're actually, David, I think y'all have had stuff cameraed before, so you may know some people that do it, but that wouldn't be bad to check it out too. But we can survey it pretty quickly from start to finish to see what we have. I just already know, like I said, I didn't need to survey it to know that it's undersized. We're seeing the problems from that. It's just that trying to find a reasonable solution short of replacing all of it.
I think that pipe also is corrugated pipe, which I don't think has the carrying capacity of smooth bore, but that's more.
Yeah, not quite, or nor the longevity, although there are much better materials now, but back then that was probably just the corrugated metal pipe, just the galvanized pipe. Now you can get it coated in all types of different materials and last longer, but 30, 35 years or so was probably the expected, the life expectancy of that pipe, and that was not counting on it being under a lot of pressure, which like I mentioned, that changes a lot of things about the pipe when it's under pressure.
I would certainly support David's suggestion that we do a full study. You figure out what the infrastructure is and what the solutions are. If we go that route, would it be helpful or harmful for what you'd be doing with your study to have neighbors give you some of the symptoms they see? Obviously not the solutions, that's what we're going to you for, but just some of the symptoms that they see individually around Candler.
Yeah, it would help, because, there could be, like I said, there's what I can see from the right-of-way, but if there were some separations, some sinkholes that you wouldn't know about unless you camera the pipe or somebody mentioned it, so if there's something like that, I would definitely want to know about it. And like I said, over the years, I can't remember, there's been 2 or 3 different residences that I've talked to over the years, but it was really looking at their specific problems, and some of it wasn't even associated with the street drainage, it was drainage from, I guess that would be to the north side of Candler, because there's a lot of drainage that comes from behind those houses and has to come around. And it was probably not pad graded, it was probably street graded, and then there have been different builders that came in, and they basically handled the drainage for their lot, and a lot of times when that happens, it's not handled, they don't really consult with each other, so you end up with pushing your problem over to the next guy, so to speak. That could have been the way that happened. That's, like I said, that's a different animal than what we're looking at with the street drainage. But yes, if anything anybody wants to point out,
Can you give us, if we do authorize the study that David's referencing here, can you give us some idea of what would be the time frame in completing that?
yeah, I mean, the surveying part of it could probably be within the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe.
And the recommendations for solutions would?
Well, that may be, depends on what all I see. I mean, like I said, I can, based on what I've already seen just from visual and looking at the overall basin, there's no doubt it will be at some point adding probably some catch structures and some pipes, at least on the lower end down there.
Okay, well, if we could get a consent from our council to put this on a regular meeting to approve this.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's within my
Okay.
purview to approve it.
Good
Just,
deal.
we'll get together and you give me a scope. It can be informal.
Okay.
But let's don't hold up the work. Let's go ahead and get the survey scheduled for your guys. And I just like to identify some of the things we've talked about. Perhaps anytime we can detain or slow down any water upstream, including the carriage lane area, if we could do that, how much impact would it have? How much bang for the buck? And to see that, and adding a pipe from that catch basin downstream. But I do need to advise the resident downstream, if they want to do work, or if they want a pipe, then what should they do? What's the best advice we can give them, other than to restore the stream?
Right. Well, this may end up involving the need for some easement from some of the residents to be able, to install a pipe, and then for the city to be able to maintain it if need be. That would, like you said, it would take some of that off of some of the private residences, if that's what it calls for, because we may not be able, there's probably only so many places we can tie in without crossing.
Well, I
Some of the
always
lot
thought it
lines.
was the cities, but if you're saying it's not the cities, then maybe my job is done.
But yeah, and what you mentioned about the stream, yeah, like we talked about, I wouldn't recommend anybody going in there and just trying to make their own changes to the stream. Number one, I don't think it would help in this case, and number two, like I said, the EPD would frown on that. Yep.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Yep.
And I'd like to thank the residents of Cameron Lane for being here. And hopefully this is the beginning of something new for you. And hopefully when time comes, that your problem will be resolved. Thank you so much. And I'm sure Jason will be in your neighborhood shortly. Thank you so much. This time we have committee appointments for judge, attorney, and solicitor. And for attorney, we have Ed Lathan as chair, Blunt, Norn, and Perriman. Municipal judge, we have Councilmember Reed as chair, Councilmember Betsy, Norn, and Perriman. For solicitor, we have Councilmember Joyce as chair, Chief Bill Ashburn, City Manager Nunn, Mayor Perriman, our clerk Katie Dunworth. And I would ask our city clerk if she would get with our attorney, our judge, and our solicitor to set up a meeting to get this review done, probably maybe at least by May.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the terms, and probably Attorney Carter could help us out. The term started with the fiscal year, July 1?
Right, it does.
Okay. My suggestion, I think, and I really think that we need to publicly post these openings. And this is no reflection on any of the three people that we contract with to do our servicing. I just think as a kind of a best practices, we're spending taxpayer money on these three positions, and I think we have an obligation to post those publicly, so for anyone to apply and let the council pick the best candidate, whether they're an incumbent or not an incumbent. I think we haven't really done that in the past. It's been kind of internal. I think just as kind of a practice going forward, I think that's how we should do it. We do that for our commission members. Those openings get posted, they sign up to be considered again. And I think that's a good practice we should do for these three positions. We haven't done it that way in the past, but I think that's something we should do, either on the city website or the public notice. We have time, I think, till July 1st. I'm getting weird looks from our city.
Yeah,
clerk
Councilmember
over
Joyce, if
Yeah.
I recall correctly, last time we appointed a new attorney, there was a RFP that went out, and there was a lot of like in-depth work that went into it. So this isn't just like a posting, hey, if you're interested, apply. It requires quite a bit of work on the back end, putting some stuff together. Our finance officer staff did that last time for the city attorney position. And for the judge and solicitor, I can't speak to those specifically because I can't recall right now, but maybe, do you remember if those require the same, or council member, city
Well,
manager?
I can speak to that, because we've had one judge, maybe, I can't even remember when we had a different judge, and we only had a solicitor
30
when
years.
when our chief changed, because at one time, the chief of police was the prosecutor in court where they had a contested case, and that's not the best setup in the world for a non-attorney to be prosecuting in a court. So we've had the solicitor, and I think Lee Moss has done that. But the experience and the longevity actually for professionals in the city do work in our favor. The fact that they're paid by taxpayer money, that's a given. We know that. We have to pay for services. But the fact that these have been very stable and have been the same, in my humble opinion, respectfully, I think is a positive and not a drawback. Just my
I
comments.
wasn't implying it was a drawback. That's something to be considered by the committees that the mayor just kind of.
And I think based on the review every year, I think it is considered, because a few years ago, it was seen as necessary to look for a new city attorney. But there was a very deliberative process, as the clerk mentioned. Several attorneys locally submitted proposals or all their qualifications, and Mr. Carter was the lucky person. Not lucky. Fortunate. We're lucky to have it. But anyway, I think it's a great thought. I think that any professional in all three of these positions are legal professionals, all three attorneys, and that anybody that ever has any desire to should always feel free to offer their services to the city, because things will change. But I don't know that the timing would be sufficient, as Ashley has mentioned, that it may be a little bit longer process than that. But certainly should, I don't think it's the case that anybody should feel like it's a lock for any length of time.
Mr.
Any other
Mayor,
council
may
member would like to weigh? Councilman Reed?
Yes, I would like to know, do we have any direction in our charter about this?
Oh, I'm not sure.
David, do you know, do we have any direction in the charter about the attorney, the judge, and the solicitor?
Not to my knowledge, no.
It does, there is some mention of it, but I don't think it discusses qualifications or anything like that. But there are mentions of those three positions being under our authority to appoint.
It simply says that the position will be appointed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't give a term or anything?
Y'all on how you do it.
Okay. Does anyone know we know Mr. Carter how long Mr. Carter has been here? How long have we had the judge and the solicitor?
I believe the judge has been in there in my lifetime, and I'm an old guy. No, it's been a long time. I think it's 25 years for,
He's been,
25
Judge
years?
Merritt has been there for 30 years probably.
30?
And Lee Moss, probably 10 or 12 maybe.
As long as I've
Close to
been
that.
here, I think.
you know, are you finished, Carrie? I didn't mean to.
I am, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this kind of reminds me of what the the council did, when I brought up best cases practices with our city, our accountant, our audit. And there was some initial reluctance to try and put it out to bid, a lot of work. I know Karen had extra work to do, but I think that was a really good practice, a really good opportunity for Karen to kind of understand things that she told me later, that she learned things from that process. And it's a good practice. We ended up giving that contract to the same accounting firm that we have had for many, many years. But just the simple process of putting it out to bid, letting them know there are other people that we're looking at, I think is good for the city. And it turned out I was very happy to give the same contract to the accounting firm we've had in the past, but I just think it's a practice, I think, that could easily translate to these three positions as well.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I mean, based on that kind of rationale, I mean, I totally support that. I mean, if we have gone along for 30 years without, and not to just single out the judge, but just in terms of the process itself, I mean, at some point, to take this a little bit to a broader review, apart from just the evaluation that's done annually, I think is a healthy way to approach city government, and to just to kind of, you know, dust off some of the processes and employ those to make sure that we're right where we need to be and we're having the most qualified folks with us. And it's not like we would do this every year, or I don't know what the term is. It wouldn't be every year anyway. It would be
It's every year.
It's
Every year.
Well, I
Every
mean,
year, we
yeah.
have to do it every
No,
year.
we wouldn't have to do it every year. No, we wouldn't.
This is required.
Yeah, we have to-
No, I'm saying the review process, we wouldn't. I mean, if we wanted to put it out for bid, I'm not suggesting that because if we started now to put it out for bid, then that would be a procedure we'd have to do every year, right? I'm just saying that maybe just sort of almost arbitrarily, the council could say, you know, just to kind of see where we are and do a little more in-depth, get involved in this process a little bit more in depth. You know, what do you?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
So basically, what you're saying is the review process, not to do it every year, but we do appoint every year.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Carrie.
Well, even if we did it every year, I mean, I think Ashley's sort of implying, and maybe Ed is too, that this is sort of an onerous, really difficult burden we're putting on us or the city. I don't see it that way. If we post publicly that these positions are being considered, and we get a couple of applications for city solicitor, for example, the committee that the mayor just appointed can look at those applications, compare them to our incumbent, if you will, make a recommendation to the council by looking at their resumes and making a decision. It's not like, I mean, I don't know why it seems such a difficult challenge to do on a yearly basis. I really don't. We do that for our unpaid commissioners. I mean, they apply, they fill out an application, we read them, we make decisions as to who to select.
Oh, I was just saying that, I felt like you were saying just post something really quick. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear that there is like a very particular process we have to follow. I'm not saying we can't do it, I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear.
So how long is the process? How long does it take? Ashley, you know?
Our finance officer's staff
Karen,
did
do you
the
know?
attorney one, and it's quite a bit of research to make.
Well, it's not, I want to be clear, it's not required.
Right.
You guys can have a meeting and change at any time.
Yeah.
You can do it but to set up a process, and your city manager's never had a contract, but some cities, and if you do it contractually, if you set it up for a period of time, I think sometimes, and this is not an excuse, and this is not a reason not to do it, but sometimes when terms are up, it's just an excuse to change. And change for the sake of change is not always the best way. And always looking at opportunities, but you know, there's a reason why you don't get complaints from your court and from your solicitor, because they do a
Let me say
good
this, Mr.
job.
Mayor.
And there's not a huge pool of people who would like to do these things. And again, that's not a,
That's true, and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we get 0 applications.
yeah.
But that is not the point.
I understand. I totally
To
understand.
me, that's not the point. Hey, does
But I
Attorney
ju-
Carter care to, since you're one of the ones that would be affected, do you have any opinions?
My position is that if there's somebody out there that can serve the city better than I can, you don't have to worry about my feelings. I will step down in a minute. I have a client relationship that if we ever quit being a team, or if there's somebody that can do it better, then the interest is the client, not me. So
So if
however
we,
you want to do it is, y'all have the discretion, but the only requirement is that you make an appointment. And if
And I guess my question would be to all our council members, have any of the council members had any feedback, a negative feedback from our judge, our solicitor, and our city attorney?
from the public?
From the
From
public?
Yes.
Yes.
Those feedback was for who? The
Both.
judge,
No, I wouldn't.
the attorney,
I had feedback for both.
the
I've
attorney
had,
and the judge?
yes, I've had really negative comments from some constituents and from just some citizens in the city. And not just because Eric just said that, that's been over my tenure as a city council person. We've just never asked this question. I don't know what made Eric come and ask that this morning.
But it's
And-
asked every year. We review these people.
We review them every year, but nobody has ever asked, do I have any comments from the public? The mayor asked me, did I have any comments from the public? So I'm just simply answering what the mayor asked me.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had some negative comments.
As have I.
And I have as well.
Well, if there are any negative comments about me that y'all think I need to step down, just let me know. I'll be gone.
They're all
I
about
haven't
you.
had any
Jim.
about you.
Every one of those is about, no.
Yeah, no one has ever asked me that. I've never said anything about it. I go over and I do my review and I'm done. But this morning, Eric brought it up and the mayor asked and I answered.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yeah,
may.
sure.
To me, I look at the annual review more of as not, are we trying to appoint somebody new, but how can they improve? How can we, if there are any issues, we talk about it, and if there are any concern in the past from staff or whatever, and can you do a better job and, by the committee. So I remember when we went through the attorney process, and I think to Ashley's point, and I'm not against just saying, hey, we'll take applications, but I think it's a lot of work on the attorneys in particular, because my guess is they have to ask a lot of questions about how much time and how, they don't just come in and say, I'll do it for $100 an hour. I mean, I think it's a lot of interaction between the attorney or the firm to find out what our needs are. And then if we're not interested in, if we are interested in replacing any of them, then we do that. But if we aren't, are we wasting time of those who are applying to go through all of that time, energy, and when we're really just kind of saying, hey, we're happy where we are, we're not interested in changing. And that would be, maybe Attorney Carter can speak to it, but I don't think when you came to us with your proposal and your billing rates, and I mean, there was probably a lot that went into that.
There was a lot of consideration in that, but I consider it a public service, and I would just tell you that my rates are for the city are well below the rates I charge to a private client, because I feel like that Madison has been good to me. I love the city, and I consider myself serving. I thought we had a really excellent discussion in the committee. It was respectful and open and frank, and I felt very good about our interview.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I've been listening, and, there's good points to both sides of this. yes, we are spending taxpayer money. I kind of consider this review, getting together, I'm kind of like Rick, from the standpoint, it's an opportunity to, if you have some things, you need to talk to the person. If you've got that information, you need to share it with them. But if every time somebody complained about a city employee, we'd probably be, and we go out and want to hire somebody else. I mean, the public's going to complain, and they have a right to complain. And we should be obligated, if we hear that, when we do the review, we need to discuss that with that person. And then we need to resolve whether we should go forward then. That's kind of, yes, we're spending taxpayers' money, but we're going to be spending it anyway on whoever we pay. So I think this is more of like an annual review. You sit down, you talk, see how things are going. Unfortunately, we only appoint them for a year. That's my thought process.
So maybe, and I don't know, in the past when our chairs in the committee interviewed these candidates or reviewed these candidates, did you say to them, I'm getting these kind of negative comments from the community, you know, anything like that?
No, sir, I didn't.
Yeah, so maybe what we need to do is this. When you review these candidates, I think you need to tell the candidate what you're hearing in the community. And we just don't make a hasty decision, you know. Let them know and let them defend themselves, you know. Let them defend themselves, you know. And let's put some thought into it before we do something that we may regret later, you know. So, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion, you know. And I can only speak for one because he's the only one that we have interaction with, and that's our attorney, you know.
That's right.
And I can just say that he has been good for our city. I would say that to you directly. You have been good for our city, and we appreciate the service that you render.
Well, it's a pleasure to
To
represent
us.
people that want to do the right thing.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just
Sure.
finally, I would just say that let's maybe continue the dialogue
Right.
and think about it outside and reevaluate it. We've all said our opinions, and maybe bring this up at another work session a little bit later on.
Right.
And I would be glad to step out of any work.
No,
And one last thing, if I may, as a point of clarification, when you asked, and I believe it was a question directed specifically to Carrie, you said, had you heard anything about the
Right,
solicitor
negative, and
or
all the council
attorney?
members.
But you did say solicitor or attorney, and Carrie said, yes, because you didn't hear, I know you didn't hear attorney, but you're saying, you haven't heard anything negative about the attorney?
Oh, no.
So, just to clarify,
Sure.
we got no dirt on you, Jimmy, yet.
Thank you. I wish that I could say the general public has never said anything negative.
Well, it depends on what side of the court they're sitting on, right?
Mr. Mayor, may I say one more thing?
Sure.
It's not just our solicitor, judge, and attorney. We constantly, or I can't speak for anyone else, I constantly hear negative comments. I hear negative comments about myself,
About all of us.
about all of us. So I would say, why don't I say anything? I don't say anything. I don't think that we need to say anything unless it's actually really bad. I don't have evidence of what anyone has done, but I'm always hearing a lot of things about us. You know, if I thought I needed to say something, I don't have a problem with saying anything. I'll speak when I need to speak. But the things that I hear, I don't think I need to say anything. I'm always receiving emails. All of us are always receiving emails. So if I thought I needed to say something, I don't mind speaking up. I'll speak up. I'll say whatever I need to say when I need to say it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Reed. And I would ask chairpersons of these committees, once you do your review on the judge, the attorney, and the solicitor, just bring us a report back when you get ready to bring your report back, okay? Thank you so much. Planning Department acquisition, green space acquisition, Fifth Street, Ms. Monica.
Good morning. I hope everything is non-controversial and positive in what I'm going to get to talk about. So,
Well, usually not.
well,
I think
okay.
this is a good one.
Well, hopefully this is not a complaint morning. So, I've got a couple things that Ashley went ahead and sent to you. I'm going to cover those first. Then there was one thing on your agenda that I didn't have a handout for, and I've supplied that this morning at your seat. And then I've got an overview that I thought might help bring some of our newer council people up to speed on some of the things we're working on. So the first thing I want to cover is there are probably only, well, there are probably 3 people left in the room that started with us when we were working on the West Washington Gateway. And so before David gets out of the room, I'm trying to make sure that all the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed on some of the things that the DDA and the city had shaken hands on. And so this morning I've got 2 of those. The first one is, let's see what Ken's got up there. Okay, let's start with that. The first one is the North 5th Street property. So this was acquired as part of our GFA funding for the Downtown Development Authority's Gateway redevelopment. There is a spring as well as we're going to call it an intermittent stream. That is a stream that is definitely a stream but doesn't run all the time and is not listed as a Blue Line State Water. That exists on the property you see here. So part of our GFA was I feel like we're doing the proactive version of what you heard about this morning, is to protect the stream banks and to protect streams. So part of the GFA basin that goes to 1 Mile Branch is flow from this property. So this property right here has been acquired by the Downtown Development Authority. They assembled a couple of pieces. That's why it's got a little bit of a weird shape. And they have a couple of other additional pieces they're working on, but the property owners are not interested or have different difficulties in selling the property at this time. So the agreement that was cut in 2015 with the City Council and the DDA was that there would be 2 parcels of land that would be purchased from the DDA for $100,000. And the 2 pieces were this 5th Street piece. There were some ideas of making it bigger. We didn't get it bigger. We only were able to acquire a little piece for them. So it's about 6.5 acres, I think. Hang on, little tight. Let's call it 6 acres, because I can't see those little numbers. 5.78. Thank you, 5.78 for those who are hyper-correctness. This tract was supposed to be $75,000, and then the other tract I'm going to talk about is $25,000. The Downtown Development Authority has finished acquisition, and they are ready to transfer it. You already have the funds. They're in your green space acquisition from your SPLOST. I was looking at the finance director to make sure I used the right fund. So the Green Space Board, when they've been looking at acquisition, knew that they couldn't touch $100,000 of that fund pool. So the money is already negotiated. The amount, the funding source is already in place, and then I'm going to move to the second parcel, and then I'll take questions on this one before I move on to the other stuff. So the other portion, this was for $25,000, is within the triangle. This is where the liquor store currently sits, and it includes 2 parcels. One that's at the tip of the point, and then a little piece that's behind it. Now, in reality, the building is built across the property line, so it's 1 lot of record, but as surveyed, it is still 2 lots of record. Both of these parcels go together, and they are the green space acquisition for the Gateway. We negotiated a tighter deal with Ms. Clark in order to get a reduced price on acquisition for the liquor store, and so this will be eventually a beautification point named Clark Park. What I'd like to do today is go ahead and ask that y'all docket it for a closing for the $100,000 that was already negotiated. But I talked briefly to David about this. I would like to do that and go ahead and make sure that the piece from DDA, I'm wearing both hats this morning, from the DDA to the city is done. And then that be understanding that this parcel, the liquor store parcel, wouldn't be gifted until probably maybe August, because the tear down is the responsibility of the Downtown Development Authority, and so the city gets it as a clean parcel. So I want to do a staggered takedown, but I would like to, since the money is there, go ahead and do it all at one time. DDA will, of course, be using that to defray its debt on the GFA note.
Did you say that I missed the Clark thing? That's the grantor or the donor of the land?
It was the lady who was purchased from. Her purchase price had one number, and it became a reduced number if the park was named for her. I think she lost her grandson.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
So it'll be Clark Park, and it'll be like one of our other beautification points, Cox Elliott, Bell Park, which I met with them yesterday, David, and I think that's solved. Atkinson Point, just a small beautification point, not for usage, just to have a better sign and vegetation that greets people to our community. And so this will be a big gateway improvement. The DDA is not on the hook and did not negotiate, so we are not expecting them to do any vegetation installation, but they are seeking an RDF, which is a redevelopment fund grant for tear down. And so it's a roughly $100,000 tear down once they abate both the asbestos and the, I don't think it has lead, it's asbestos only. Asbestos abatement and demolition will run about $100,000. So,
Is that for both buildings?
yeah, actually, yes, sir, that is. That would include both Adrian's and the liquor store. The liquor store has asbestos under the floor tiles.
Was the staggered takedown a pun? Taking down the liquor store?
No, sir, it wasn't a pun, but thank you. I needed that this morning. That is a good pun. Okay. So the only reason I want to make sure that we stagger the takedown is I think it's important that the DDA finish their responsibility of clearing the lot before it becomes city property. And other than that, we could stagger it so you do 75 and go ahead and do a closing for this and 25 and do a closing for that. But in reality, there's no chance the DDA is going to keep that property. So that's up to y'all. Any questions about those two pieces?
Just clarification, both of these pieces of property, the one off Fifth Street and this point were bought with GFA funds. So you're just
Yes, sir. Mhm.
turning the money back into GFA from the
Yes,
city?
although DDA may defray their higher local debt first before they pay it to GFA instead, but it's still going to the collective GFA debt. When they borrowed the money for the stormwater construction, there was 1.9, I think I have that right, at the GFA level at 1% for 20 years. And then to finish the acquisition for the amount that Ms. Clark wanted over what GFA would allow us to pay, they borrowed $450 at the local level from United Bank, and it's at 4%.
So it's gateway debt, not GFA. You're using GFA as a holistic term but it's local debt, not GFA debt.
It's all tied to the GFA stormwater project.
I mean,
That's
it's
what, yes.
it's gateway, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that when we discussed this early on, it was wrapped into it. It is the stormwater basin, and therefore, this is the debt that it will probably most likely be applied to. I don't make that decision, but it probably would go to the 3.58% debt, not the 1% debt. But they're all of that is stormwater debt. Any questions about this or any instructions for me?
So what time frame are we looking at to get Adrian moved across the street, if the store moved across the street?
Yes, sir. So that, we were on site yesterday. My understanding is that we are looking at the liquor store being in probably in the next 30 to 60 days. They are having a delay that has nothing to do with construction. They're having cooler problems. Their cooler vendor can't get certain things that they need, so they're having shipment issues. The Adrian's parcel is what we met about yesterday to solve the utility connections, and particularly the grease trap is what we discussed at length yesterday. So they've got a change work order coming to the full DDA. If I had to guess, we're looking at late summer. They're thinking 90 days, but watching peak work, 90 days. We are expecting that the parking lot that the city funds are covering down there will be delivered by end of April because they gave us permission for Madison Fest to park on it.
It looks nice down
David's doing a good job with
there.
that.
Very nice.
And just to clarify, you said that the tear down of the liquor store and Adrian's would take place at the same time.
Yes, ma'am. We're holding that because we want to wrap it into one grant.
Got you, yeah.
And so all of that is probably 90 days out because Adrian's would need to relocate. And then after she relocates, you do a demolition, you get some cost savings from the contractor coming in and doing everything at one time and then taking everything to the landfill at one time. So it doesn't make sense to do it site by site. Any other questions on that?
Thank you, Monica.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to just add a comment. I have to be honest and say that the stormwater project, I was a bit skeptical, which I have been known to be for certain things. But when we get the out parcels tied down, when we get the red mud settled down there, the pond and the structures and the whole thing is just doing exactly what it was designed to do. I mean, there's some landscaping, some other aspects and improvements that need to be done, I think, that will tie everything together. But it's a great project. DDA has a lot to be proud of down there because we just have to remember very few years ago what it looked like and how it worked, and it didn't work at all.
Absolutely.
So
Is my memory right that 40% of the stormwater from the downtown area flows into this system?
I don't remember
That's
the number,
correct.
but is that about right?
Is that
Okay.
right?
I wanted to say about a third, but it may be a little higher. They did, just like you heard Jason talk today, they did a whole basin study. And it picks up at least a third of downtown's water goes to the basin.
Wow.
And so for a long time, we talked about how to distribute that cost onto, some of the downtown because they were receiving the benefit. But luckily, we've found an exit strategy, I believe, that will not require any of that. So we're excited. I'm excited for them. I think they've done a good job. Okay, can I move on? Yes? Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Next one up, thank you, Ken. It's like having the Wizard of Oz in the back of the room. Okay, so the next piece this is also something where we've dealt with some stormwater issues over the years. This is in front of Candler Lane. The city supported Green Spaces bid to buy from Bank of Madison I'm sorry?
It's not Candler Lane.
Oh, did I say Candler Lane? I didn't.
You
Okay. It was in my head, I guess. This is in front of Valley Farm. This is 4.5 acres that the Green Space Board wanted to acquire. The city supported that acquisition out of Green Space funds. Valley Farm actually paid for half of the acquisition or a little bit toward the acquisition. And so this is the parcel that I handed out and is in front of you today. I didn't have the survey at the time to give to Ashley. And so Ashley's not in default. That's my bad. And so we are doing a conservation easement on that. So what I'm asking you this morning is to go ahead and give the mayor the opportunity to proceed with signing the paperwork for the conservation easement. I'll remind you that the conservation easement gets transferred to Athens Land Trust. All the conservation easements we do are going to them right now. We've already paid the fees for it and everything. Y'all may have already authorized it, but just to make sure that everything's clean, I'm just making sure that I'm reporting back. The attorney for Athens Land Trust has finished the conservation easement. And as soon as that conservation easement is cleared for signing by the mayor, then it gets filed, and then the land becomes permanently protected, can't have anything built on it after that, at that point. This will be a series of conservation easements that will protect a larger floodplain and a larger portion of the stream for Horse Branch Creek, which is this handout. So I thought I would show you how laborious, time-consumptive, and slow the process might be, but over time, the reaped benefits that the city has. So if you will look at this map, I'm going to talk about just this whole area that is going to fall under conservation easement over time. The city's piece, our piece, is only a very tiny piece of this. Okay, so if we start up at the far left corner, you'll see Markham's Hill. That's a 6-acre conservation subdivision, and that is the green space. You will probably be seeing that on your council docket. We understand that Mr. Terrell's intention is to gift that 6 acres. And it is not eligible for a conservation easement because it is a PUD, and that type of subdivision already protects the land, so you don't need to file a conservation easement to protect the land. The PUD protects the land. You'll also notice the 2 acres that we negotiated with the Murray family for the next tot lot. So they donated 2 acres, and the future Murray tot lot is in that location in front of Valley Farm instead of 11 trailer lots, which is really exciting. Then you have the front end acreage in front of Valley Farm. That is the city's conservation easement that we're talking about this morning. Behind that, on the other side of the creek, is the Valley Farm conservation area, that when you're looking down into that subdivision area, that puddle of green, one side of the creek belongs to the city, one side of the creek belongs to Valley Farm. And so the Valley Farm group has that as part of their conservation common area. Then the next piece that you see that kind of has all the way to what looks like a bridge. If you don't know, the brackets are a bridge. So if you see that trail, follow the river water or the stream waterway all the way to the bridge, that portion is the backside of Veranda Park. So Mike Conrad's is doing his own conservation easement on roughly 18 acres, and that will protect the stream and the steep slopes. Then if you were to work from Washington Street, or it's labeled Bethany here, if you looked at where the Bethany Road tag is, do you see that in white? It says Bethany. It's by the little red box. I'm waiting for heads to nod.
Yep.
Make sure, okay? All right, so if you were to follow that back all the way to the bridge area, that is Kelly Mahoney's, which is part of the Wellbridge development. It is 25 acres that he's doing a conservation easement on, protecting that portion of Horse Branch. Then if you were to, it's a little distorted in size, I think, but if you were to come down to the yellow portion where the pond is, that is another 14 and a half acres that Mr. Mahoney has given the city a use easement to that is not allowing any development on as well. He'll be filing his own conservation easement. So that's where we started in terms of stringing those green spaces together. And then I am happy to tell you that if you were looking back at that Bethany Road tag, and if you see either the little ink line that I drew for you, or if you see the white line that kind of squares that off, and on here it's the piece that looks like a mountain. Ken, will you click that? Can you click that? Okay, thank you. That piece, I'm happy to tell you that Mr. Mahoney's decided to donate another 25 acres. Wow. So he's going to take that 50 acres off the market. He is pulling development rights off of it because of filing the CE, but those development rights are not intended to be used in this vicinity at all. We're going to see those probably shift. Try not to talk his business too much. You will see those shift below the Hill Park area out. Try not to be overly specific. Below our commercial areas is probably the best way to say it, on open greenfield stuff we have. Where would we be expecting density, and where we are already telegraphing we will take it. So it's an appropriate shift, but I wanted to make sure that I relayed that because of this, we were thinking we were going to get 75 acres together as congregate stream protection and open space. This is not developed park space. It can only have a trail on it. That's it. No playgrounds, no mass grading, no pan grading. And if you've watched Wellbridge develop, I think it's wonderful that we're going to see 50 acres of no-cut zone right next to Wellbridge, because Wellbridge pan graded, and that is daunting when you watch it happen. Yeah. So instead of 75 acres, we're going to have a resulting about 100 acres protected inside of an extant built community. That almost never happens. So this is a pretty good string. It's coming together all at one time. My understanding from the attorney from ALT is that that they will be prepped and ready with all property owners by the 1st of May. And so we're just, of this 100 acres or so that is amalgamated together, the city only represents 4 acres, 4.5 acres. So our Green Space Board deserves a really nice pat. So I will be happy to answer any questions, but the request is here, if we haven't already made the mayor eligible to go ahead and execute the city's 4-acre CE, that we do so at the council meeting. And I'm happy to answer questions or give further input if you'd like it.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, may I ask one question? Wasn't Kelly also going to do some work on the trail starting? I thought
Yes, sir.
that
So-
was mentioned at one time that he was going to do something.
Yes, sir. So when Wellbridge went through zoning, they are a PUD, and a PUD requires a community balance test. And his community balance test items were, so he was getting extra density for seniors, right? So then over here, what he put on the table was 25 acres of green space as the underlying land that was donated post his CE. A 14.5 acre easement for use of a property, and that's the one with the pond, because we declined to take it. He was willing to also give that 14.5 acres, but we didn't want to maintain his stormwater pond. So that was the smart move. And then the third thing was he's supposed to grade 2.5 to 3 miles of trail when we're ready. And so those are his zoning conditions. They are embedded in his CE. We have the right to do trails, and this leads us all the way to the 5 linear acres that you have from BOE.
The advantage to these conservation easements is that if it's done exactly right, the owner gets a tax deduction as a donation for the value of the land.
And for
And they're
us,
They're very strictly supervised. They check these things year
Right.
after year.
right,
To make
and
sure.
that's what I was going to offer, is that Athens Land Trust sends you a letter through me, my department. They send you a letter annually of their inspections of all the CEs on land in the city. So the cemetery land, the Round Bull Springs, I'm trying to think of all the little CEs we have right now. So they come and inspect every parcel, and they notify us of encroachments and any other problems that they see that are happening on the property. But they're there to defend the IRS acknowledged environmental factors. There's 5 of them. And not all parcels exhibit all factors, but they're there to defend that. And so that's what that payment of the endowment fee to the accredited land trust pays for. It pays for their ongoing staff and legal fees if they have to defend that property.
And the Mahoney lands also generate TDRs, do they not?
Yeah, anybody who does a CE can generate those, yes, sir. And so instead of the housing units being there, like the second batch of the mountain track, so the little thing that's shaped like a mountain, he could put 25 single-family dwelling units there. And instead of putting them there, it's zoned R2, so he could put 50 single-family dwelling units there. So instead of putting them there, he'll put them somewhere else. I'll remind people that get their pants tight over TDRs that it is a pro-growth and pro-green space policy. It does not, it's density neutral. It's always density neutral. And the mayor and council has final say over where the density gets shifted. There's a public hearing.
You shared with me I pulled a map up that shows sending and receiving areas, green space and whatnot. Does the council have that?
They've had it at some time in the past, on more than one occasion.
Can you resend that? It's just very interesting to me. It's
Sure.
just a visual, just as a fresh reminder of where the TDR, the credits are coming from and where they're going to, the sending areas and receiving areas.
So a
That's where
quick
the rubber
description
hits
of
the road.
that, to go with the map, is that sending areas are anywhere where the green print has identified that there is a valued resource. And that could be stream, it could be steep slopes, it could be a historic preservation property that's intact with a large green space component, but there hasn't been any movement toward those yet. It was something that could have probably protected more acreage. I mean, I know that everybody's kind of been discussing Kathy Whiteside's property and its breakup, but that's something that could have protected the acreage with that. But that was not something they availed themselves of. So, but the receiving areas are very specific. There are C3 properties that are already zoned C3, which is commercial, where our apartments and townhouses can go. An existing multifamily that's dilapidated, that maybe you're offering a couple more units to get them to a good example would be Bramblewood. You might give them 8 more units in a rezone if they would cannibalize and refurbish that development. It's starting to suffer. So it's existing multifamily that's degraded and that's looking at rehabbing. It's an incentive for them to rehab. It is C3 property where you're already going to have apartments anyway, and maybe you're asking to shift that a little bit higher than we would normal. Planned unit development where you're looking at a full plan and you can balance a site. And then urban renewal area. And that's where you're trying to bring opportunity. So those are the 4 areas you can shift them to. Again, not to be fearful, it's not without a public hearing.
Right. And look, I have one question, Monica, if you will,
Sure.
on the conservation easements. And I understand from you that the city itself is doing an easement on a limited number of acres, and rest of it is through some of our citizens that have donated that land, and they're doing the easements.
Yes, we're doing the easement on 4.5 acres, and the residual of what you see highlighted on your plan is being done by private property owners.
Right. Are you aware of any conditions that will be put on those easements in term, there's certain, I understand that there's certain things you can do with an easement as going forward to say, you're reserving a right to do something on that
Right.
easement.
Okay.
I apologize for not having the right language.
No.
for that, but
Actually,
you get what I'm asking.
this is something that I had to learn, and I've read more than one ordinance to make sure I know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the Athens Land Trust writes their conservation easements, and I'm looking to Mr. Jimmy in case he wants to, I say something incorrect. They write their conservation easements where they remove all rights, period. You have no rights to the property whatsoever. So there are no rights reserved.
Okay.
And then you go back, that's how they work their policy. Their attorney finds that a lot cleaner for them. So then you go back and add to it specifically
Right.
the rights reserved. So as opposed to going ahead and saying, we want to do this, this, and this, and then all other rights go to you. They make it super clean. They take all the rights away, and then you have to specifically add it back. So those things that are added back are very clear, and I can tell you what they are. The first one is they have the right to the development rights, and they can move those anywhere they want to.
Right.
They have to acknowledge they're going to do that. The second one is you have to build trails for recreational use. Those trails are limited. You have to tell them how big the construction bandwidth is. You have to tell them what the materials are. You have to tell them a general location. That map is recorded in the baseline. And then you have the right to conduct recreational and educational activities, like if you're taking a group down to test the stream and learn about biology. And you can have signage that's related to that. For instructional and educational purposes. We've had one trail where there was a lot of interest in making it, they call it all capable, so for blind and deaf, hearing and vocally impaired folks, sight impaired folks to be able to use the trail as well. You have the ability to add amenities that allows their use of that property. And then finally, you have the right to install basic amenities that you might need associated with the trail. So an arbor, trailhead, a drinking fountain, a couple of parking spaces, all of that has to be, and ALT requires it to be, telegraphed in advance. So there's no vagarity. The only thing that is still vague about a CE is whether the trail goes on this side of a tree or on the other side of the tree. Mm-hmm. We don't even have cutting rights anymore. That is very specific. You can only remove it if it is a public hazard coming down. Other than that, you don't get to cut trees. There is a reservation to be able to take out invasive species. Right. So if you had a lot of, what's the stuff that climbs the trees? I can't think of it right now. Wisteria and also kudzu. Wisteria and kudzu, the city has the right to go in and address invasive species, but other than that, you can't even cut anything. So the CEs are tight, super tight.
Good.
Typically, you'll see some landowner that owns 1,000 acres that they use as a hunting preserve. Mm-hmm. Put it in, they want it preserved forever, so they just put it in a CE and reserve the hunting rights. Sometimes they'll reserve timber rights to very controlled cutting or something like that.
Right.
For every right you reserve, it lowers the amount of your contribution. You know, if you gave the whole thing up,
Right.
without reserving anything, you get the full thing.
And sometimes people will reserve a right to build one house for a family member and then one for, you know, a cabin or two for a child. There are no reservation construction rights on these properties other than the ones I've articulated to you.
Okay.
And the
Good to
trustee
know.
has to make sure you do it like you said.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Did that
Perfect.
answer the
Thanks,
question?
absolutely.
Good.
Good to know.
Anything else this morning? Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Monica, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Main Street Director, Ms. Robinson.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. I almost want to be like my school teacher and tell you all, at this point, we're going to take a break because you all have been under so much information this morning, but I say that jokingly. Thank you for the opportunity to come and present before you this morning. In front of you, you'll be able to, on the visuals, see the Main Street Madison Quarterly Director Report. You'll also have some documents, hopefully, in front of you that can be a part of, as a guide to the discussion. Here, we have some celebrities on the front there. I hope you all appreciate some of the visual.
Oh, celebrities.
This is my ode to spring. Today is April 1st, and I know spring was a couple of weeks ago, but I'm excited that Main Street is really getting to be a bit more visible, if you will, in the public. And so, a couple of the quarterly highlights that I'll cover, and I'm going to do this very swiftly to be respectful of your time. In honor of our newest and newly elected Councilmember Wagenhauser, I'd like to do just a very quick refresh of the Main Street program focus, just to give an overview of what my responsibility is and what the Main Street program approach is about. You'll also see in the report, very small, but a copy should be in front of you, which is the 2021 Community Impact Survey. Since I haven't had an opportunity to speak with you all since last year, I thought it would be pertinent to share this impact information with you. Some current program projects that Main Street is going to be focusing on, and then one of the most exciting parts that everyone looks forward to is the special events. And I will pause for a moment to say right there that Main Street is not a professional party planner or event planner. I take my work very seriously to not be seen as such, but to work with my colleague on creating a community that brings forth some economic development opportunities for our downtown, and I'm happy to be leading and pairing with my colleague to do those initiatives. So the purpose of the Main Street program, of course, is to provide a broad-based community engagement, kind of like a holistic understanding of what are the qualities that impact or the factors that impact the quality of life in our community. What are those strategic things that we can focus on to bring about neighborhood and downtown revitalization? And how do we do that? How does the Main Street program support the commercial district, which is really what our downtown is? We do that through that acronym you see right after the word revitalization, which is DOPE. And we're not talking about anything urban terminology that you may be familiar with, but I will explain. So the D in the acronym DOPE, of course, is design. So one of the main things that the Main Street approach, which is the four-point approach, where we're leveraging some short-term assets and projects in order to experience some long-term gain. One of the main things of those is preserving some of our physical structures that we have and enhancing them. Capitalizing on the fact that there's some unique assets that set our commercial district apart. I had the privilege of attending Mobilize Main Street this week in the cities of Rome as well as the city of Ackworth with my colleagues, my Main Street colleagues from all across the state of Georgia, and to look at what cities are doing to preserve the architecture and the historic character in terms of design and buildings in their downtowns is absolutely amazing and very inspiring. The O in the acronym is organization. So we're focusing on taking the resources that we have, whether it's staff, volunteers, our partners, the funding that we've been given to mobilize those things that we put in our work plan. And the Main Street work plan is a portion of the overall comprehensive plan that you all have seen from time to time and will be exposed to. And as a part of that, we take what Main Street calls community transformative strategies to push the envelope, to move those things forward. The P would be promotion. We do have a promotion committee in the Main Street approach here for the city, and that really is just to encourage some collaborative working together, some cooperation amongst our downtown businesses to do things like coordinated sales and special events, things that promote the retail market that we have in our downtown, which is huge. A lot of people love to come to Madison to shop. I was speaking with a local business owner on yesterday and was just so happy to hear her share with me that in the January, February, and March of 2022, she experienced the greatest sales in that first quarter of the year than she did in the whole entire year of 2021. Wow. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. She's seeing an increase of traffic from our neighboring communities, particularly the lake area, and so we're doing something right. Our retailers are doing something right in downtown, which leads right into, if we're promoting right, we're gonna see some economic vitality. We're going to see us using our unique sense of place. People have long desired to come to Madison for various reasons, but those reasons are going to turn into more economic development opportunities for us to look inside of our city and see where are there some businesses that we can invest in, but where are there also some innovators. We have some small business people who are doing some things in their homes, that we would love to tap into that creativity. We'd love to tap into that business and see how we can pull that from their home into our downtown and build even more greater vitality and expand on that. We all won't be here forever. Some of our downtown businesses are aging. They've been here for years. And so we're looking, how can we expand that? How can we pull on the talent that we have within our city and continue to build on our economic vitality in downtown? So in doing that, you have your 2021 economic report in front of you, and so we capture that at the Main Street level. We look at what is the public investment in economic vitality? What is the private investment? And so every month, I'm required to submit to the Department of Community Affairs a report that collects the data that you see in front of you, the number of public improvement projects. So that would be things like trash cans, streets, tree grates, sidewalks that are installed in, things that we may not think that we're capturing, but we're capturing this data, the cost of doing it, labor and materials. We're looking at that information. What does that, look at that cost there in 2021, and it may not even capture everything. You know, there may be some things that we have missed in recording. Number of building improvements, that would be from private investment as well. Every month, one of Monica's staff members does an excellent job of capturing when permits are issued, what those permits are for, whether they're residential, commercial, renovation, etc. The number of housing units, now that says 0, but this is a learning curve for me because as we issue COs, am I saying that correctly? Thanks, Ken. Monica left, so I don't have her. But as we issue those certificates of occupancy, that's when I begin to report them. So when we establish a good system for me internally of how I can capture when those residential units go online, you'll see that number increase because obviously, you know, we do have residential living that has been approved and is already being occupied. Also looking at promotional events, I'm just amazed when I look at the number of volunteer hours that we have. Everyone knows that the civic engagement and volunteer engagement in our city is huge. Our community is built on people who believe in a sense of place, who believe in investing in their community and getting involved, good, bad, or indifferent. We capture those numbers at events and festivals, and so 713 hours, that probably doesn't even scratch the surface of what our volunteers do to invest their time and resources in our community. In 2021, we did see a loss of 3 businesses for various reasons. One of those businesses actually moved to a neighboring community, so they closed to us and opened to another community that was more feasible for their business model. And then we experienced 2 other losses, which was a loss of about 4 jobs for us, and we capture jobs in terms of full-time staff. It takes 2 part-time staff to capture a full-time staff, which we would then report and record to the state as full-time. And then total net new jobs in 2021, 58 jobs with the opening of businesses and things in downtown. That's huge to our town, and we want to use the word small. I think we need to look at how we define that word. Current projects, really quickly, of course you all are familiar with the facade grant program, which is something that we use to stimulate the investment in preservation and revitalization of our downtown buildings. So in March of 2022, the 3D committee, which is the nonprofit through DDA that oversees the facade grant application process, which I just recently have taken over as staff, we approved 2 applications for some work to be done on facades in downtown totaling $2,500, and those are reimbursement grants. So the building owners go ahead and make that investment up front, and we're able to reimburse a portion of the work that they have done there. Downtown Dollars, that is a hit, continues to be a hit from the Main Street office. I just was in awe when I went back in January and looked at the sales from November 1st to December 17th, I believe was the date that I stopped counting. Over $13,000 in Downtown Dollars were sold just in that time frame. That means that if those dollars don't come back to the office, that's revenue that has just come to the city and are waiting to be expended back into our businesses. You know, you can look at it however you want to. I see money being made and an economy that's experiencing a lift and some vitality there.
Could you tell us, Karen, who is actually buying these dollars?
Absolutely.
Initially, like who comes into your office and buys $100 worth or whatever?
Great question. So annually, we have a couple of major purchasers, one being Morgan Medical Center. They'll gift all of their staff. So at one time, we can get anywhere from a $1,200 to $1,700 purchase from them to gift their staff. Also, parents come in buying for teachers all the time for teacher appreciation. We also, around the holidays, stocking stuffers are huge with Downtown Dollars, an easy way to give a gift. And one of the things that about the Downtown Dollars that we're working towards that has been a concern of mine is there are a couple of restaurants that are not participating in the program. And so I want to see what it is that I can do to participation. So we're planning to take one of our local restaurants who uses the Downtown Dollar program very heavily and do an education session with those non-participating restaurants to make sure that it's not an accounting issue, which is what I have heard, that it's too difficult for them to account it on their books and they'd like to see the money up front. And you all know that they bring the dollars and are reimbursed based on the amount that they return to us. Councilmember Latham, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Are you looking at me in excitement and in
He's
awe?
just like this.
Hey, you did such a fantastic job. Everybody tells me all the time when I walk around town, and I'm just amazed at what you're doing, and I'm
Thank
just
you.
very proud of what you're doing.
Well, I have to be honest and say that the footing and the foundation was laid very nicely for me coming in. I didn't have a specific Main Street experience, but understanding community and what it takes to build relationships, I think, is a gifting. And so it comes with its challenges, but you just do what you need to do and take the good, the bad, the complaints, and everything else, and you do as I told Rotary the other day, like the penguins on Madagascar, you just smile and wave. Ribbon cuttings, we've experienced a couple of ribbon cuttings, pretty successful ones. One of the ribbon cuttings that was done this past quarter was at Main Street Medical, and I don't believe I've ever been to a more family-oriented, lively, just heartfelt ribbon cutting there when Dr. Boulware opened his practice. And it's exciting to have a medical practice in our downtown within walking distance, and they are taking new patients and have a beautiful, beautiful office. If you haven't had an opportunity to go in and see what they've done with the place, it looks pretty amazing. Madison Grace Baby, did any of you attend the grand opening for them on?
Yeah.
So did you experience the llamas, the live llamas?
Oh, no, I missed those.
Okay, well, there were live llamas inside of Madison Grace Baby. I think that was what had the line out the door waiting for photo ops. But Sean Esco has done an amazing job. She expanded Madison Grace Home, and so at the request of her constituents, she opened Madison Grace Baby. And so I'm excited to see what it's going to do. And it is a new mix to our downtown. I don't believe we've had a specific baby focus. She only had products in her back room, and she's expanded an entire store to focus on the baby line. And so, not my forte at this time, because all my children are grown, so I'll be going in there just to get gifts for other people, happily. We'll be looking to do 2 more ribbon cuttings upcoming. Zeb Grant Design Home, as you know, has expanded their storefront, and so we'll be looking in the month of April, so please stay tuned for the date for that. And then the long vacated Ricky D's location is now inhabited by Wing Nights. And that says in Benny Paul's, and that's at Benny, it should be at Benny Paul's, Wing Nights at Benny Paul's. And so by the Benfords, and so they'll be doing a ribbon cutting as well. They're waiting on some signage on their awning before they conduct the ribbon cutting, so, but they are open. Film industry, which is something that gives our little committee a bit of pause sometimes when we have to review the applications because of the intrusiveness and the work, but I just commend our city manager and Colin, Officer Campbell, on the work that they do to put strategies in place to help the film industry stay. Obviously, it doesn't come without its bumps in the road, but we have staff in the city that just know their work inside out and do everything they can to support the film industry to make it happen. And it brings in some revenue. And so, director support, just a couple of things about things that I'm doing to make you aware. I'm the liaison to the CVB and Chamber of Commerce. So I'm able to attend those meetings on a monthly basis. The city does provide marketing funding, out of marketing funding to the CVB in their budget. And so I oversee that and work with Jennifer to determine how those funds are spent. I also formed the Cultural Arts and Tourism Collaborative in the fall of 2021 out of a thought that tourism was struggling, particularly following the pandemic. And so arts is something that is across the board for everyone, public arts, cultural arts. And so wanted to bring together all of the arts organizations and tourism organizations to begin having collective conversations of how we can support each other and enhance tourism. And so Ken Coker, my colleague, is a part of that, representing public arts. And so we have a good group and a good meeting, and out of that, we're going to be looking at how to implement a campaign that was done many years ago, Reignite a campaign about becoming a tourist in your hometown, your own hometown. And lastly, administering the Heritage Tourism Grants, which is in the budget and provides $8,000 to each to 3 organizations that are responsible for tourism, our museum organizations. Some of the future focus as I wrap up this report is that I would like to look at shifting from what's currently standing as our outreach committee, which is just focused on really about ribbon cuttings and some other things, to more business development. How can we support our businesses further, and even look at a project that Monica and I are looking at in terms of business incubation, giving a spot, as I alluded to earlier, to grow that entrepreneurship, to give some training on small business development, how to establish business plans, and create a next step, a first step for those who may occupy our downtown in the future. And so I'm really excited about that incubator project there. Some event sponsorships and engagement. How can we engage more businesses in sponsoring our events? We have a pretty static group of sponsors who come to us, but I want to see about expanding that. There are other opportunities to solicit new businesses and to get additional funding, and so Colleen and I are looking at how to step up our package and to market perhaps a one ask, where we go to different businesses with a package, give them a a la carte of things that they can pick from, and then be able to secure that funding at the beginning of the year, where we're not doing this at the time of events, but getting that funding promised and secured ahead of time. And then the Tourist in Your Hometown campaign that I mentioned. Each of you probably have already seen the Main Street Miscellany newsletter, where we provide bi-monthly updates about what's happening in downtown. And I listed here a couple of things just for the month of April for your awareness, and so that you can be sure to place them on your calendar. If you have not already heard, on next Saturday, April the 9th, the Atlanta Braves Foundation will be bringing their World Series trophy here. Madison was selected as one of the 151 stops on the foundation's 151st anniversary. And so we have been selected to be one of their stops where they'll bring the World Series trophy. They will case it on the pavilion stage, and families will be able to come to the park, enjoy a little ballpark music, and take a picture with the World Series trophy, and just create some memory making, perhaps eat downtown, or bring their lunch into the park and enjoy a day from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. The Community Shred event on April 16th. We have a local nonprofit organization that's partnering with other nonprofits, Morgan County Family Connection. Also on April 16th, that will be hosting a mental health wellness event for mothers and parents for their children. It's called Mommy and Me in Town Park from 11 a.m. to 2. Very interesting things that they're going to provide. It's sponsored by Mera Group, Community Care, as well as Spread Love Ministries. And so also April 30th, Madison Fest. Colleen has told me to pray really hard, since I know how to pray, to ask the Lord to be very gracious and to give us great weather and no challenges, so that we can proceed this year with Madison Fest. So all of you all that know the word of prayer and are okay with that, I ask that you join me in that. Any questions? Also in your packet is just a very brief copy of the 2022 annual assessment, which Main Street is required to submit every year to the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. On page 3 of that document, it just gives you a highlight of some successes and challenges that we experienced within the Madison Main Street program over 2021. Thank you all so much, and I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Thanks for a great report.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. You're just such an asset to the city, so
Thank
we
you.
are all grateful for you and hear great things about you all the time.
Thank you so much. As long as you all don't run me away, I'll continue to stay and,
We're going to shackle you.
and support the city. Kidding. Thank you all.
We won't run you away, we just want to make sure nobody else comes.
No
and
one
takes
else
you
comes
away.
and get me. Well, David got me here, so I don't know. He's leaving. I'm a bit in my feelings on that still.
If my lawyer friend from Greensboro ever attended one city council meeting, he would go back home and slash his wrist.
Oh.
It's just, he just can't, every time he comes up here for lunch, he cannot get over the development, the things that are going on, and the quality. And I see a lot of visitors that come through here in my office from out of town and remark, is this is a beautiful city, but it's so clean.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, if you haven't had a chance to frequent some of the restaurants around Hancock Street, please be sure to do so. I know that Mr. Preston has something else he's working on that will be online, I believe, pretty soon down on Hancock Street, so stay tuned for that as well, maybe perhaps in the next 30 to 45 days. So be on the lookout for that. And, don't forget about our businesses around Town Park. This is what I'm ending my note on. When I went to Rome, they have a structure where they're creating boroughs. If you're familiar with New York City, New York has the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens, all these boroughs. Well, that is what Rome is doing. They're creating like a historic district, an arts district, a river district. They're creating like little southern boroughs, just as New York is doing. And so the businesses around Town Park have been pushing me to start their own little borough. They want to be the shops at Town Park, and I told them, go for it. You know, collaborative, work together, market yourselves together, create events together. But I do want to publicly make sure that we're looking at all of our, even though we have so much business activity happening on this end, don't forget about what's happening around the park. And I think that our events coming up in April and May and moving forward are going to begin to revitalize some of the energy that's happening on that end. So thank you all so much for your continued support.
Thank you. City Manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. You have my written report in front of you. I apologize, I didn't staple them, I'm trying to save money. So, always trying to cut back. Now, apologize for the date. I started to just make hand notes on an old copy, but I went ahead and typed in some updates, but I forgot to change the date. But that should be April the 1st, so be on your toes today for your friends and neighbors. Don't fall to any April the 1st foolishness. But anyway, and the first thing I wanted to say is, well, thank you for allowing me to be here. And I don't know if you, and I think you do, but I think we all should remember how fortunate we are to have the staff and the employees that we have, the ones in this room, and the ones that are not here, and some you don't see very often. But the ones you don't see, they think and they go about their job with the passion and the care and the responsibility that the ones you do see. And if that's any indication, you know they're hauling the mail pretty good. So thank you for them. I just wanted to say that in a public way. And let's see what else. Just to run through this, I didn't have any updates on the airport, but really the only issue we have remaining is to settle on the value of the land from the Jackson Family Trust. That is working its way into the court, whether I think it may be a jury trial on that. We're still working on a settlement. The state is backing us up on that, so we won't be out of pocket a lot of money if the price goes up, and it probably will go up some. But that's coming up in the coming month or two, that we have counsel that specialize in that working on that for us. Traffic calming, we've added a couple of signs. You know, we've got signs working on the north end and the south end. I hope they're doing some good. We're
They are, David.
the one up at
Just coming in town.
Edenton Road, just as a
yeah.
reminder on both ends. So
Slows me down all the time.
But just a reminder, it does a lot of good. The street resurfacing, if it's not done by today, it's real close. Just as a reminder, Airport Industrial, North 5th Street, Billups, Hugh Circle, Turner Drive, Gilmore Lane, Skyline Drive, East and West Skyline, and High Street. I think the contractor, East Coast Grading, did a nice job of milling and tying the new pavement into the existing curbing where it was. The striper will come in. I've talked to him about doing that. And the striper is also doing the airport runway crack seal project that was included in this. With T-SPLOST, SPLOST, and with LMIG funds, we're able to do about 2 miles every year. And it's not huge, but it is getting our streets in better shape. And next year, you saw the list. I've put it out to bid. From memory, I can't remember all of them. There are a good many small streets in that, but one of the major streets, Pearl Street, is going to get resurfaced this year. So that'd be a good lick for us. And also, just dropping back to the ones freshly paved, if we have committed to traffic calming a speed bump, then we're going, like Hugh Circle, we're going to put one over there. And we're listening to other folk in neighborhoods that would like traffic calming. We're always trying to listen to that. And we have a good counter, a good modern counter that's based on radar that will give us traffic counts, and we've done that on Academy Street. When I get a complaint or a concern that, you know, cars are going by at 70 miles an hour, then I want to know about that. I want to see if that, not with my eyes, but with technology, to see if that's actually happening. And so we're able to do that. Downtown improvements, just a lot of more good stuff, and thank you, Karen, for mentioning that. Tree grates, replacing some trees, putting new trees downtown. Our trash can, our shrouds, you don't see many of the old open shrouds anymore. They worked for us for a long time. They were kind of homemade. They were good design. But our new, heavy, more closed top, cleaner looking, we've about replaced all of our trash cans downtown. It's a detail, and it's a little thing, but if they're not done well and if they don't work to keep your town clean, then they can be a problem. The Hancock Street block, working with Preston on his work to remove the rest of the canopy down there, to put in 4 trees. The street lights will go in the next few weeks. I've talked to the Georgia Power Lighting folks. That's going to get done, and that'll just about complete. We may have some street furniture, maybe some benches to put down there, but it's turned out to be a nice section of street down on Hancock Street. Dropping back on the report, didn't say anything about Stanton Springs, and this more specifically about Stanton Springs North. The Natural Gas Committee, comprised of Covington, Social Circle, and Madison, has been meeting more regularly. You might have heard a little thing called Rivian that's coming up. The committee is working to expand the natural gas area to include that Stanton Springs North and the approximately 2,000 acres, because it will definitely take all 3 cities to serve it. So we're getting in a position, there won't be a lot of hard money spent up front, but as that thing moves forward, we know more about how they want it served and where we need to put the gas services in. We will move on that. At an earlier meeting, you did an agreement, approved an agreement with an engineer. His name is Eddie Conder. He already does work for Covington and Social Circle. We use Keck and Wood engineering still, and Keck and Wood will continue to help us on certain things, but where we have a joint issue on the committee, Eddie Conder will do that work.
Does Social Circles sell natural gas like Madison does?
Yes,
they do.
and Covington. Yes, all three cities are natural gas cities. On sidewalk expansion, the final little leg of East Jefferson Street has been tied in. That's up there from Jefferson Ridge up to the Housing Authority. We've gotten that put in. Mr. Harris, Charlie Harris, has done a fine job. That's taken a little while. That's kind of a complicated area down there. We added some pipe that improved the section that was kind of steep off the back of the sidewalk. We also added a safety rail. It's not a traffic guard rail, but it is a rail that will keep you from, it'll remind you not to wander too far off or you'll fall in the creek. So it's very good. The contractor will move to College Drive and East Avenue to do some toe kicks, to repair some areas there that we've had some complaints on. And the work in Valley Farms, we had a lot of work to do in Valley Farms, and we got all that done. I think we're really, really close. There may be a little bit. But we also did another thing in Valley Farms. They wanted a collective pad for their leaf and yard and leaf and limb debris or yard debris. So we poured a concrete pad out between the sidewalk and the curb so that the truck doesn't gouge out. Everybody's familiar with I call them the wallow holes, that if you put your stuff in the same spot for too long, you also let your pigs wallow because it'll become a depression hole in water and whatnot. In the past, we've been putting in 4x4s to keep that machine from, but great city employees have figured out a way to work between them, so they're still gouging out. So I think we're going to move from the wood or natural material, or concrete can be considered natural, but we're using, instead of wood, we're gonna pour pads in those places. And Say Creek has asked us to come in, and we're gonna identify about 5 places that will be collective spots between the sidewalk and the curb to pour those little pads, and they'll be a lot easier to maintain and keep clean. So we're trying that as kind of a,
Do you have a guess, David, as to when that work on the sidewalks on College and East Avenue
it
would
should be
start?
moving ahead. I don't really know because the contractor doesn't just work for us, but Aaron will be directing them on where to go and what to pop up, so it'll be ongoing. I don't know exactly when that will be. Update on City Hall. Most of the behind the walls work, the mechanical work is being done. Not a lot of structural, but ceiling work and whatnot. With most of the wiring of the conduit and the plumbing and the HVAC work, they're now beginning to get ready to put in finished surfaces to close up those cavities and to put the walls back to the way they need to be finished. There was a decision also made. Karen met with the contractor and we consulted with the architect to remove the slate from the roof and replace with metal. Not really. I'm just teasing Ken. No, that slate was, the original contractor's estimate on that was like $100,000 to remove that slate, clean it, and put it back up there. And I said no. We didn't have major leaks, and it was just too much money for that because the nails were copper, it was in good shape, and the consultant we talked to about that said there's no need in spending that money. Well, they came back again and said, we would like to put a vapor barrier or an underlayment, a modern underlayment under the slate. And I said, well, give me a price. And I thought it was going to come back very high. It was $10,000. Wow. And $10,000 is a tenth of what the proposed price had been, the estimate had been to do that work. And that's a no-brainer. While we're at it, remove the slate, remove any damaged slate, put the underlayment underneath, check any decking work that needs to be done, replace that, put the slate back down, replace the slate is called I think the color is black or it may be dark gray, but it's called Buckingham slate. It's very good quality. As we know, this building is approaching 80 years old. If I do my math right, 80, yeah. And the slate's still in great shape. It'll last a long time, but they will be able to replace whatever new slate they need in kind, and they'll be able to clean it when they get it down, put it back up there. So I thought that was, and we all agreed that was a good investment. The slate will be put back up. The gas line to Bostwick, I call it phase 2 and 3 are out to bid. Phase 1 was the work that the city did, roughly from the Dixie Highway down to Fairground, a couple, 3 miles of pipe that was put in by city staff. Phase 2 will be, a contractor will do the work. The bore under 278 to tie in high pressure up to a regulator station that will step the pressure down from 400 PSI to like 75 PSI that requires a regulator station. It'll be done at there's a church on Old Mill Road between 278 and Dixie. It'll be done right on a property line in a good spot. The contractor will then also do the bore of Dixie and the railroad bore being the most complicated because it's a process. We have the railroad permit for that. It has to be, I can't remember, maybe 25 feet below the rails or some depth, so they do a directional on that. And it's cased as well, so they will pick up there. The phase 2 also includes going through the park and then pushing all the way out to Prospect Road, which is Fairplay. We'll evaluate the cost of that, but also we're asking the contractor to, okay, if you give us a price on that, what if we gave you from Fairplay Road all the way to Sandy Creek, down Sandy Creek to riding up to the first poultry farm? We just want to see if the contractors are hungry at all, if we could get a better price overall for doing a lot more work. The first one was about 17,000 feet, or about 3 miles. The second part is about 21,000, so roughly 4 miles, so 7 miles in all. But they do include, like I said, the railroad bore, probably the one that's given us the most pause and just anxiety is the bore which will be through solid rock, which they do all the time, under the, below the spillway at Hard Labor Creek, you know, where the road does the S-turn. There's a bridge there, and then the historic spillway, and this will be right at or about the right-of-way underneath. And we've talked to the state park, and they're all good with it. And it's probably not going to be as big a deal as we're making it out to be. It will be costly. Work for that can be $200 a foot installed pipe. We have all the pipe, remember. We purchased all of that ahead of time. We have all the valves, we have the machine to lay the pipe out. So, you know, we were using that all the time. I know Eric, Councilmember Joyce had concerns about that, but we're also installing 4-inch pipe in a subdivision in between Jersey and Social Circle, or between Jersey and the Take Station. And that's a subdivision of several, a dozen or more high-end houses that will use extensive natural gas in those, and we're not missing those opportunities in those areas. We're pushing natural gas. Our rebates are very popular. We're not missing many. When we don't get gas in a house, we want to know why. We want to check those people's pulse to see what's maybe ailing them, because it's very, very efficient, good fuel going forward. Last thing, Monica touched on the parking lot down at Bull Street. We call it the Bull Street parking lot, or the Gateway parking lot. The base coat of asphalt is down. The final coat will be put down within a couple of weeks, I think, maybe into April some, then the striping, and then it'll be in place for Madison Fest overflow parking. And we'll be ready for the package store and for Adrian's when it gets online. And all that'll start coming together, seeding and strawing all the red dirt. It's working well. Finally, the Hill Park Comfort Station, I'm calling it, because that's what the architect calls it. We've talked to Dennis Riddle in Watkinsville. He worked with the DDA on the Adrian's build-out, the interior build-out, and he had a design already. Ken's working with him on some to make it more Madison, to do some details on the exterior, but we're looking to significantly reduce the cost. You know, we bid that out twice, and we both times came in way more than we thought we should spend, because we do want to use this same design in Gilbert Park and in Wellington Park when the time comes. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Good report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting up that orange ribbon, too.
But this go to end our work session. Now, we know that we got going into executive session. If we can get a motion to go into executive session, then we take a quick break.
Mr. Mayor,
Discuss personnel.
Is
we call the
is my presence required for the
No, sir.
executive session?
It's not.
I think it would be proper for me not to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Unless I'm needed.
I think you're okay. Good.
Mr. Mayor, can we
Yes.
call the called meeting to order, and then are you guys gonna take a break after you call it to order, or go into executive session and right away?
Can we call the call meeting to order, then take a quick break and go directly to executive session?
Yes, but you'll have to make a motion before going into
Yes, I want to make a
executive.
motion to go into our call meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, no. Now, if someone can make a motion to go into executive session.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move we move into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. Did you take a quick break? There's some donuts on the side over here if you need a.
You didn't bring donuts, did you, Mr. Mayor?
And this is announcement for anyone on live. Mayor and council are now on a 5-minute break, but the meeting will now go off virtual as they are in executive session to discuss personnel matters.
We have one person online? Yeah, we don't take comments at the executive session. It was worship. Maybe that's why I got it was a very nice, yeah, it was very nice.
She called me and I told her to call Mr. Mayor and to call David.
Oh, yeah, about the,
About city council.
yeah. Well, it was a really nice worship meeting. I mean, back then, really, but you know, and they're gonna do it virtual again this year. Well.
I'm done.